Good morning and welcome to Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you before our kids wake up.
Today, we're going to continue our conversation regarding childhood cancer for September's Cancer Awareness Month. And we're going to be talking about the financial difficulties that are experienced by families of kids with cancer.
Okay, so like you said, we're going to be talking about the financial aspect of dealing with cancer diagnosis in the family and just how that can be, overwhelming and all the, ins and outs of just where your money gets needed most. Yeah. So, or how to manage all that.
Yeah. And I think it is a very unfortunate fact that's important to talk about. When parents find out that their kid has cancer, they shouldn't have to worry about finances. They're busy enough thinking about trying to make sure that, their kid, they do everything they can for their kiddo, and being there for their kiddo, and just trying to wrap their head around, the emotions and this new life path that they've suddenly, been thrust on. And unfortunately, the majority of families who have experienced having a kid with cancer, financial difficulties are a part of that, and they play a big role. So we kind of wanted to talk about that today because it's something that is important to the conversation about what it's like for families of kids with cancer. From a personal aspect, I think we were pretty lucky. We've always been we did the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace course before we were even married. We taught it for a while, shortly after we were married. And, so we have always been very cautious, lived on a budget, saved money as much as possible, wherever possible, and lived below our means, when we can.
Right. Like because of Financial Peace University, we didn't have any credit cards or credit debt. And, we were pretty much up on every payment. We owned our cars and we all had like the mortgage and the student loans, which, were one of the hard things to balance in. And I think that gave us, a solid footing with going into this, in addition to just insurance coverages and some other things from the social work side of the hospital help on getting some support there, which I can't say isn't available to everybody. But I think that you can apply for different grants and different financial help in those treatment plans. It's just, I don't know. I wouldn't think it's as easy as some people might make it out to seem.
Yeah. So, when Kenzie was diagnosed, one of the first things financially that changed for us is that I stepped down from teaching. Prior to Kenzie's diagnosis, actually, when I was pregnant with Kenzie, I was working on getting my master's in nursing education. And so from the time Kenzie was born, I had been teaching nursing at the university I graduated from, in addition to working as a public health nurse, and decided that I really needed to step back from at least one of those roles. So, we made the decision for me to take a break from teaching for the time being. Quite frankly, the teaching income was about 90% of what I was bringing in. And so for me, when Kenzie was diagnosed, there was about a 90% reduction in my income. And that, was our choice, but was what we needed to do in order to be home and with Kenzie, and be able to take her to her appointments. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, I think that was the scary side for me, because it was like, okay, well, will dig in where I can at my job and
right.
push harder where I can, but I also want to be available and, make changes that we need to be making, but it's hard to change things when you're cutting your income back.
Yeah.
But, I was definitely supportive of you being there and being available for her, so it wasn't like I was
Yeah.
upset with you to stay working
Right.
or figure out something else, because obviously that wouldn't be helpful for the situation. So like I
Yeah.
said, I think on our last video, like I was very much like, what do we need to do? Where do we need to go? Who has the best treatment? Do we need to move to wherever? So
Yeah. Well, and even more so, if you were to get a diagnosis that had a poor prognosis, quite frankly, both parents may end up taking significant amounts of time off work to spend, time with their kid while they still have it, Part of being a parent of a cancer kid is spending a lot of time living in a hospital. It's spending a lot of time driving back and forth to the hospital or to wherever you get treatments. Our budget for out to eat went way up because the hospital didn't provide food for family members. So, if Kenzie spent a week in the hospital, that meant I was eating downstairs in the hospital cafeteria or, having food DoorDashed or Uber Eats or whatever, because the hospital that we were staying at wasn't close to our friends and people that were able to. They would have had to make, an hour plus drive just to bring us food,
right.
When we were in the hospital. And the same with, going back and forth. We packed a lot of meals for our expeditions down to the hospital for treatment that was just a outpatient visit. But sometimes things happened. There were lots of times that, a 2-hour visit turned into an all-day visit because she spiked a temp or because the pharmacy was behind and couldn't get the chemo upstairs or whatever. And so there were lots of days that I didn't pack a meal because I didn't think I needed it. And then I ended up needing it. There was a lot of gas that has been expensive. Our cars have taken a ton of extra mileage and wear and tear from the driving back and forth. And those are just kind of like the surface level things. We, as you said, we're very blessed to have insurance that took care of a lot of the medical expenses. And that is not always the case. I think, do you have the number on I think we read on average families spend like $833,000 over the course of their child's illness on out-of-pocket medical expenses. That's crazy. $833,000 on medical expenses.
That's a lifetime of money. Yeah.
Yeah. And that obviously, like I said, that's over the course of their treatment. So, that some cancer treatments are pretty short and some take years, like leukemia does, unfortunately. But that's just on medical bills, which is something that for us has not been as much of an issue. There's lots of just like very obvious challenges. And certainly, as Josh said, there's also lots of sources for support. But sometimes they're not accessible, or difficult to access, difficult to find. And again, when you're worried about your child's survival, having to then search for and apply for loans and grants and things like that is pretty low on the priority list, I think. So it becomes kind of this huge challenge for many families. And quite frankly, the things that we've experienced have been so small compared to what a lot of families go through. we have always been very cautious. And so while we certainly had to be more lean, there have been a few issues or, stressful moments when it comes to finance for us. And we've been
right, because
very lucky.
Even through the course of treatment and getting everything done financially, you still have all of the house maintenance, car maintenance, other things that you weren't expecting. Your fence to get blown over in a storm, or other random things that just occur.
Roof is leaking.
Yeah.
We've had several of those. Like the roof is leaking. What else? We had to have like a hot water heater repair.
Right.
Our van died.
I can't even think.
Our basement flooded.
The dogs turned on the water in the bathroom when we came home, so that was fun to see that mess.
Just life happens. Unexpected expenses come up, and so even though we had an emergency fund, we dipped into it when we had an emergency. Yeah, and then we were still living in the middle of an emergency and couldn't replenish that for the next one.
Right. Unfortunately, you can't turn the life aspects off while you go through a treatment plan. So, we also were very lucky in that we had, a church family that came alongside and supported us. Mm-hmm. We had friends and family buy us gas cards and, restaurant gift cards and bring us food and just, give us money outright. I thought it was cool. One of the guys at work put together like a raffle type thing for a sports event, and it was a really nice way to just give us support, but also just to make it a fun way to support people. I think we got 50% of whatever he got from the sporting game,
the winnings or whatever.
And that was helpful for us, and I think it was just a nice way to help people. I was like, if I see a chance to do this for somebody else in the future, this is probably the route I will take, because it made logical sense.
And I think that in regards to accessing support and funds that are already out there, one of the big challenges for families of cancer kids is you're not eligible for a lot of those things until you are under the poverty guidelines, or until you demonstrate a financial need. The difficult thing, I guess, is that what did we say? I think that the stat we read was like 40% of families who were well above the poverty line ended up below it by the time treatment was, or ended up below it during the midst of treatment, and again, it kind of is just, it's if you find that where you wrote that down, correct me.
I'm reading it, but my chicken scratch isn't being translated to my brain.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the numbers that you're thinking. So,
and so again, like when you're looking at a huge number of families who, are trying to maintain their mortgage payments or keep their other kids in private schools or whatever the things are that they've done in the past, that ends up not only no longer being possible, but also, in order to get by at some point, like by the time they need or are able to receive some of those scholarship funds and things like that, they've already sacrificed a lot financially. Another stat is 1 in 4 families report losing more than 40% of their annual income just as a result of work disruption. I had to pull it back up because apparently Josh can't read the stats that I asked him to write down.
Sorry.
That's how it goes. We talked before in a podcast about Josh's handwriting and how bad it was. But my personal opinion is if your handwriting is bad enough that not even you can read it, maybe you need to go back to first grade and retake the handwriting class.
I wasn't seeing the numbers that you were saying that should be there.
So 1 in 4 families report losing more than 40% of their annual household income. That's not the case for us. Like I said, if I was a single parent, that would have been a 90% loss in income for me. But, Josh's Josh has been very blessed in having a work has very flexible hours. And so we've been able to work around that a lot. So he hasn't had to have a lot of time without pay. It's meant a lot of weird hours for you over the last couple of years.
But with flexible time and all that, it's been nice.
It's been a huge blessing.
We can flex our time within the whole month. And that is really helpful for being able to just like take the 3-day weekend that we have to take to spend in the hospital for her high level doses or whatever. Yeah. And, you know, I'll just work the next weekend to make up that 2 days or whatever from the week.
And another huge blessing is that both of our families live close and they've been able to watch the kids. You know, if that wasn't the case, there would be a lot of times that you would have to stay home from work to be with the other kids while I was in the hospital with Kenzie.
Right.
You know, so again, like that's another way financially we've been very lucky, quite frankly. 1 in 3 families face work disruptions that result in at least one spouse having to quit their job. Again, you know, I think that the point is simply, you know, not only are these families dealing with the unimaginable burden of finding out that their child has cancer and dealing with everything that entails, but there's also a financial aspect. And I think that part is kind of awkward for families to talk about. You know, there have been a couple of times where I've talked with like the social worker that works specifically with oncology families at Children's. And even though that's her job, that's what she does all day, she asks me specifically, like, how are things financially for you? How, you know, how's this, how's that, whatever. Even with her, it's an awkward conversation to have, you know. It's very awkward. It's very uncomfortable.
Well, when we were doing the financial piece, university course, I think I don't know, it was mentioned then that like talking about your finances is like a taboo social subject. Like you don't want to tell everybody, you know, here's the price over my head. This is what I do. This is what I, you know, where my income's going and all that sort of thing. I mean, you want to make sure you're being smart and living in accordance with your means and not making that big debt pile that Financial Peace University helps you get out of. Not that we're advertising for that right now, but if you haven't done it, do it. So yeah, there's definitely an aspect of just, I don't know, not talking about your finances because it's not, I don't know, appropriate or it's seen as not appropriate to, you know, say like we're hurting financially or whatever. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know. I feel like it's almost known as far as like being cancer patient parents, like you're definitely going to have some, extra expenditures that you weren't planning on. So it's not just like, oh yeah, our, you know, cruise to wherever is canceled next weekend and whatever. Yeah, we're losing that money for our trip. You know, it's a lot more ins and outs of just, like you said, more time on the road, more time out away from the home, and not able to maintain a balanced income because you don't know what the course of treatment is going to bring or the course of life with everything else. So flat tire or whatever else. So.
Yeah. And, you know, to top it off, financial difficulties and medical challenges are 2 of the top causes of divorce in American couples, you know, and, you know, you get the double whammy of that. So it is unfortunately common amongst the majority of families that are dealing with childhood cancer. And so I think it's just something that's important to address frankly and bluntly. You know, that we've been very lucky. We've been very blessed. We've had people do so much for us, you know, that we didn't expect, didn't feel like we deserved.
Well, I think, I would definitely say we've been helped in a lot of different ways that have, I would say, kept us afloat, you know, as much as, you know, we've been helped and like just had the ability to keep going. I feel like there's always been like, we've been within an incident or 2 of like not being debt free or not being well off in this treatment plan. Like we, have probably been on the verge longer than I wish to be.
Yeah.
As far as like, I don't know, being a house payment away from having the house or something. So not that we've filed for anything like that, but the help that's, showed up or, dropped in front of us and said, here, we did this for you. We just didn't tell you about it, has always been help and just, I don't know, kept us afloat, like I said, and It's been amazing. So we appreciate all of that. And I hope that most families out there are, experiencing some level of support and help in those aspects of where they need it. So it's been, I don't know. The blessings are amazing, and it's also hard to like just how to explain that to people and like tell you like we were financially struggling and then something showed up. But then I don't know. It's hard to talk about because I don't know how to put it together because it's not like it's a nice spreadsheet of like here's all the information, here's where we spent this money, and here's where this money came in when we needed it.
But it is true. I mean, there's been lots of times where really for the better part of the last 2 years. We've been one disaster away from real financial issues. We've been one emergency or unplanned event away from major life-changing money troubles. And we started off lucky. We started off with a big buffer. We started off with good health insurance. We started off, with all of these things going for us. And there have been many times, where we've been one thing away from. And we've been very fortunate to always have somebody there to, surprise us unexpectedly with something that we weren't counting on, or to support us. We've had people say like, I don't know what's going on in your life right now, but I had, this uncle I didn't know die and I got all this money and I wanted to support you a little bit or whatever. Right. And, I like just thinking about it and how many times that's happened. Like it's hard to talk about or even like think back on all of those times and what a relief, what a blessing, and how fortunate we've been, because it is the last thing you want to be worried about or thinking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Is like we don't have a car to get to treatment, or whatever, and so. It has been a difficult journey, even though I would say we've been very fortunate. It's still been difficult, and all the more so for so many other families with the bad kinds of cancer or with less of a buffer to start with or without family or friend or church support.
Yeah, or between
or
jobs
whatever.
Or has to change jobs and insurance and, make sure that they have whatever the clause is that, pre-existing conditions, because I assume that will be a thing for now and forever for Kenzie, since you'll have this. And that's my, bottom of the mind, of the back of my mind, like how do I make sure that she has coverage for that when she, comes out from underneath of us at whatever age, just to have that any side effect issues covered insurance-wise for her in the future. And it's hard to think like, I don't know, about that aspect as well and make a plan for that, So yeah, I mean, there's definitely been lots of thoughts of financials that just come with all of this. And I was going to say the other thing is like we talked about, like trying to find those benefits for grants and other things that you can apply for. And it's hard to want to find the motivation to even do those because you don't think you'll be the one that gets accepted that. And then the 2 or 3 that you do try to go after for like getting help, I think I went after some that weren't necessarily for like money, but it was like for like getting your house cleaned up or doing something, to help your family in some way. And it was like, oh, well, we are a service for, this type of cancer, but not this type of cancer. Mm-hmm. Or you're in the wrong zip code to receive that. We only do that in, 456 and not 457. And we don't support you in that way because you're in the wrong city or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was very weird to find out because it was like, you see all these, I don't know, commercials and ads like, oh yeah, do this, sign up for this. And then you try to go actually do that. And it's like, oh, well, that's only in this region. So sorry, you're outside of that, or you're too rural or not, close enough to the city
limits, whatever.
And so it's like, okay, well, I guess next time we'll plan for being in the right spot. I don't know. But that's why the extra help that we weren't planning on has been so beneficial, because we weren't able to get access to things that were supposed to be helpful. But we just were outside of the categories on making the mark.
So I think probably the best way to conclude this is to say to all of our friends and people who love us and have been there to pray and support us and encourage us and all of those things. There's, even if I tried to sit down and make a list, there's too many. But we are so grateful. We're so ggrateful.
Yeah, I was gonna say apparently this series is gonna be for the tearful series for us. So
I don't like it at all.
So far, I think we've cried on all three podcasts.
Listen, I was tear free on the last one.
I think I cried on the last one, didn't I?
You got choked up a little bit.
One of us maybe. We'll see how the rest of these go, but hopefully, it's just making awareness for cancer, childhood cancer. I don't know. More effective. So
it's important. And if you have the ability to support somebody that you know, even if it feels uncomfortable or awkward, just do it. It will bless them in ways that you cannot imagine. So my thought is always, everybody in this world is given a skill, is given a talent, and we all have different ways to use those. But if there's somebody in your life that is struggling with cancer, whether it's childhood cancer or adult cancer, or even some other kind of chronic illness or unexpected diagnosis, think about what it is that you're good at or that you can do, and offer that blessing to the person in your life, because it will mean more than you possibly know, and more than likely they're struggling with that, whether or not they have shared that. So if you have the opportunity to be that blessing, that person that steps in just in time for the next emergency, how cool would that be? So we totally encourage you to do that for the people that are in your own life.
Yeah. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share this with those that you think need it, and we will see you on the next adventure.
Bye.
Bye.